I'm Kyle Malnati, your host of the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. At Calibrate, we exist to help people create generational wealth through real estate. My personal mission is to encourage, empower, and educate you by sharing best practices from business leaders that are proven winners. Broadcasting from the Mile High City, thank you for tuning in to the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. We're everywhere, baby. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati. Kristee Leonard from The Leaders Realty in Austin, Texas is our esteemed guest today. Kristee is a buddy of mine. She's a fellow 30 under 30. She achieved that accolade by Realtor Magazine in 2014. She's an award-winning realtor. She's got, too many awards here to really count, but we're talking Platinum Top 50, Centurion Award winner. She's got Austin Business Journal's Top 25. She's doing it everywhere. Kristee, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
And you're local in Austin there. It's so cool to be able to connect on Zoom. We've seen each other, obviously, in so many 30 under 30 reunions year over year, but it's great to see you again. You're always looking very fashionable. You got your hat on today. I love it.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Oh, it's great to be seen. Great to see you as well. And what I'd love to get into is you spent most of your life in Austin, Texas. You went to the University of Florida, though, and so that was probably a pretty big reach, being native to Austin and moving out of town. And you shared, as we were prepping for our show, you shared that you had this pivotal moment your senior year as you're kind of coming of age, almost as a young adult here, where your parents had gotten a divorce. And that ended up being, I think, a really important storyline to share just on how you got into real estate, but also really how your mom and you galvanized this relationship. And in many ways, real estate is one of those things that was a coming out party for your mom. She was, like a lot of moms, very focused in on the kids and making sure that you had everything you needed to be successful. And she sacrificed a lot prior to her real estate career to making sure that everything was set up for you. Then she's getting divorced and realizing she's got to get into the job market. And real estate was one of those low barrier to entry, high income potential. And I'd imagine that was probably a pretty scary period of time for your family. So what was that like? And as you reflect working with your mom, how did she do all of this as you have this privileged life and all of a sudden it seems like everything's crumbling down all at once and you're about to leave the state? And has your mom talked to you about that? And what were some of the things that she went through as she was really kind of fighting for her family?
Goodness. Well, I would say I look up to her. She's a rock star. I've seen so many, I'm sure it's this way everywhere, but kind of in the little bubble that we live in of the Lakeway area, divorce is quite common. It's kind of like a reality TV show here, lots of affairs, lots of things like that. And so, you know, a lot of women handle things differently. And she didn't become a crutch to like alcohol or pills or, like depressed and laying around or going out and partying. Like she just got into it. She got into real estate. She got her real estate license. So the divorce happened when I was a senior in high school. I kind of realized I wanted to step in my senior year of college because that's when funds had kind of depleted. So she had funds through the divorce to kind of start getting going and getting on her feet and doing real estate. And she's been great at it. But whenever that happened, we became a team and we became united. And even though I was, off at college, that I just, I was not going to have my mom lose her house. I was not going to have my mom move into an apartment. I was not, I'm just very, very protective of my mom. I think because she's like the best mom that I could have ever asked for. And would give anything for me and my brother. And so I just wanted to reciprocate what had been given to me my whole entire life. So I also was kind of over college by my senior year. I was bored with it. With people think is crazy because like your senior year is like your hardest, and I was just like wanting to try something new, wanting to be back home with my mom, which Florida was great. The reason why I went off to Florida was because I felt like it was going to get me out of my comfort zone. I actually started at TCU, Texas Christian University, but I didn't make an effort to make new friends. I was just like with my same clique from high school. And I knew that if I went off to Florida on my own, that I would be have to meet new people and have to, and that's the same thing with me studying abroad in Australia. I did it on my own, and I just wanted to like push myself outside of my comfort zone. But so my senior year of college, I was just, I wanted to move back home. I wanted to be with my mom. And then also I saw that things were struggling for the first time ever. We didn't know, if a mortgage bill was going to get paid or if a credit card bill was going to get paid. And I wanted to help my mom. And so I got into real estate, and it's just been completely amazing. And I just hope that whatever people do, they realize that really the only thing that can hold us back is ourselves. Never would I have guessed that in my early 30s, I would have helped my mom pay off a home. Just, there's so much that I have been able to do, and that has been real estate has enabled me to be able to do that. So I'm just so thankful. It never was something that I thought from, little I was young, I thought, oh, I wanted to be a realtor. I know a lot of people, their family, it's been a down line of realtors. They always knew they wanted to be a realtor. For me, it was just, how can I make the income that I need to make to help support my family and not have to, work my way up through a company or whatever. And I saw that my mom was doing it. She didn't have a college degree, and so that's why she got into real estate. It was really the only avenue for her to make the income that she needed to make. And so that has really, it's been such a blessing. It's been so amazing. I mean, it you have to give it your all. I really don't have, I need to set more boundaries, but I I like am real estate 24/7, but I think that if you're made for it, you're made for it. So,
A beautiful story about your mom. And the tie-in that I would like to make is that we chatted about this before we went live on the show. And I just also think it's something that people think about a lot, that when given an honor like Realtor Magazine's 30 Under 30, by definition, that's a youthful recognition. It's a recognition of success at a young age. And both of us are in our 30s now. I'm a few years older than you, but still in my 30s. And we're both at the very kind of front end of the millennial generation. The millennial generation has been dubbed as this entitled generation, or this pampered generation, or as you shared with me prior to, these are your words, kind of a spoiled generation. And there are periods of time, especially when you were in high school, that you felt like that was appropriate. You had a privileged life, you had kind of everything given to you by your parents, and then this divorce happens, and then mom's out there trying to figure out how to earn an income, and the two of you really galvanize together and decide, okay, we're going to do this together. Mom, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to bring a lot of energy and youthfulness to it. And I think that's really important to share, that the millennial generation gets mislabeled a lot of times. There, of course, in any generation, there's going to be people who are expecting that they're going to be given something or entitled. But I think you've proven, as so many have in this 30 Under 30 honor, and it's the reason why I interview so many of our classmates, is just that it's incredible, because you have found a way to just grind and work, and with your mom together as a team, it's been really incredible. And I think that that's something that's just beautiful to see you demonstrate on a daily basis.
yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a matter of struggle. Struggle is what pushes you. And, for me, like we were talking about earlier, I did everything. And I was actually speaking on a Platinum Top 50 thing, and I had a slide to prove a point that I did a lease sale that ended up it being like 4 million in sales. Because I did the lease first and I didn't turn them down, and I created that relationship, and then they used me when they bought and sold properties. And so it's just one of those things that if you have the time, if you're a new agent and you have the time, you should work everything, because leases eventually turn into sales, and it's that relationship that you're building.
I think it's a great point because most of what we hear is you've got to be a specialist. You've got to get into this particular area of town or this product type or only do sales over this amount. And what I have learned from our 30 under 30 brethren, and you're saying this as well, is that the reason that we all got here and that Realtor Magazine said you're a special group is because we're willing to grind it out. We're willing to work anything. We're willing to drive all over town, do leases, do all areas, do all price points. And you found it very interesting now that you've experienced success that has been really, I mean, it's been notable. You've got all these different awards that you've won. You'll talk to other people and you're like, look, I'm at a spot where I'm at kind of outside of my bandwidth here. I'd like to refer you something. And they're like, yeah, that's not really what I do. And you're like, you're gonna be kidding me. Like
Yeah.
I'm gifting you business here.
Yes, I totally agree with that. That's one thing I would say is that if you want to succeed in this business and you want to, it's great to have a market niche. And it, when you get to that point, if you want to have a market niche, but when you first start out, you just need to, you need to have an old fashioned, hard working ethic. Is you just have to. So
Well, and as we were sharing at the beginning of our show, you're based in Austin, Texas. It's where you grew up. Besides that period of time that you're at the University of Florida, go Gators, right?
go
Um,
Gators.
beside that period of time, you've spent most of your life in Austin, and you are doing something different than I think a much larger organization that's based out of Austin, Keller Williams, which is where you and your mom got your start. You're doing basically all the things on your own, and that you shared with me that one of the struggle points for you, and it's a growth opportunity, is that delegation is hard, especially for someone that's successful. I've experienced that growing a company over the past 4 years, being able to let go. We're kind of, as you experience success and you realize, okay, I know I can do it, we can become these control freak extraordinaires, and it's very difficult. And you shared that you've had some showing agents and some people that have worked with you and you felt like they just weren't clicking. And so both you and your mom are basically doing your own clientele as a team, but that's something that is different about you than maybe most people associate. All right, someone who's an award winning realtor has probably got 30 or 40 people on their team working and they're all contributing to this, but you're largely doing this on your own. And so some of the things that I would love to talk about is just how you set your day up, how you enable yourself to work on so much production and high end production. If you see any of Kristee's production that she does, I see all of the different listings she has. I mean, this is high end real estate that you're doing, and you're largely doing it on your own. So how do you set yourself up for success on a daily basis?
Oh goodness. I mean, there are definitely weeks that I feel like I get not enough sleep for sure. I've had some of those recently. And this year, I don't know if it's changed for you, but my schedule has been completely off. I was getting in a habit of going to bed early, waking up early, and I liked that because I felt like I was getting things done before the noise and the day started and feeling kind of ahead of the game. And then this year, it's like I feel like everyone's schedules are off. So I'm back to writing offers at 11 o'clock at night, and it's just one of those things that I need to be there for my clients. And so I don't really set the boundaries that I probably should. But as far as what my day looks like, I try to set certain days so that they're the most productive in the sense that if I need to do files and go through contracts, that I do that on a day. If I need to do meetings, I do that on a day because I find that if I'm like doing meetings and everything on the same day, that I'm not, time is wasted and travel and things like that. So, as much as I can, I will try to segment it that way. But really, I would say, and what I have done, you and I discussed about how I had taken on two agents. My mom and I, we work as a team in life, but in real estate, we handle our clients individually. So, as far as I had brought on one realtor who was going to both assist me and do her own business. But for me, I just realized kind of getting into how you were talking about a lot of people focus on the team structure. And I just realized for me, and maybe I'm not doing it the correct way, but I was micromanaging and spending a lot of time overseeing the agents that I had under me and their business as opposed to focusing on my own. And I realized that my GCI would be higher if I just focused on my sales and not managing. So there is kind of that fine line between holding myself back by not leveraging. And so that's what I've worked through. If I could tell myself something starting out would be to have tried things sooner. I think that everybody has the right fit for them. And I just don't think for me, or at least right now in the stage that I'm at, that I would want to manage a team of 10 agents or whatever. I enjoy what I'm doing. But what I have found, this is my best year yet. And right now, if everything closes, I'm reaching 40 million. And that's with like no salaried assistant, just, purely me. But I found a realtor who she has a real estate assistant business. And so it's just if I need her to do something, I pay her an hourly rate, but it's not a set number of hours. She helps several different realtors. Her broker is okay with it. They've signed an agreement. So that has really helped. And what works for me right now, I think what will eventually work for me is bringing on a full time licensed assistant who can help me. What I need the most help with is showings. And I know that this is completely opposite of what people think. They like contract to close. But somewhere where I really help my clients is in catching errors and problems throughout whether it be in the title commitment. And yes, I disclosed I'm not an attorney, I can't provide legal advice, but I can still point out if something looks odd to me, that doesn't look right. And I mean, I've caught things where HOAs needed to approve things being in an easement or whatever. But things that where the property had gone through three different sales, nobody had ever caught it. Nobody ever caught that the septic wasn't properly permitted. But because I'm able to spend that time and be detailed on the transaction, I feel like I'm offering a higher level of service to my client that if I had a contract to close person, they would not be finding that. And so for me, that's where I feel like my value is. I feel like once anyone can go and open the door for someone, and it's all about being more of an advisor than just a realtor and offering a higher level of service. So I found for me that I like to have help with the showings. And then once they find that property that works for them, then really kind of investigating all aspects of that property to make sure that it's a good purchase for my client. So that's kind of opposite of what most people do because most people have contract to close help. But that's just where I feel like I offer a lot of value.
There's so much to unpack in your answer. And one of the first things that I really want to share that I agree with is that just because other people are doing their business a certain way, and I do believe in modeling, I do believe in looking at what someone else has done to become successful. But if that doesn't work for you, it's okay to do it your way. And obviously, Kristee, you'll get to a point where you say, that worked for me then and it doesn't work for me now. We're all going to iterate. We're all going to calibrate our businesses to constantly improve. But I agree with you. If you know that you are super service, you're white glove, you're the Ritz Carlton for your clients, like, I'm not delegating that. That's what makes me special. They hire me. They hire the person that's going to take care of everything. And you've probably moved mountains for your clients in ways that other maybe larger teams that might be doing more production or have 40 people working as a team, they may not be able to provide that same level of service. And your client saying, look, if I'm going to list one of the most important assets that I own with Kristee, I know that I'm going to be able to trust that she's there every step of the way. And I think it's really good to have that self-awareness to say, this is what makes me special. So that's the first thing that I want to share with you is that I caught that, and I want our listeners to hear that just because your mentor or just because someone else at the company is doing things a certain way doesn't mean that that has to be the way you do it. Create your own special brand, and really, I think that is leveraging it. I think you're sharing that this is what's special to me about working with me. Next thing that I picked up, and I don't know if you know this person, and that's not necessarily the point, but there's an author and coach named Dan Sullivan. His coaching company is called The Strategic Coach. One of the things that they teach all of their coaching clients is that they should have buffer days and then they should have productive days. All right. And then one of the goals that they have is on those buffer days, or those in between days where you're not doing lead generation, you're not doing the stuff where you're actually out there in the field working for clients. You're putting all of those administrative tasks into your buffer days, because this Friday I've got this particular property that's coming online, and it's going to be go 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 to get that property under contract. So I think that's great that you segment your day that way, or your week that way. And do you have typical days that are those buffer days for you, that are these days that you're kind of filling in your administrative tasks? Are there certain days that just seem common to be that way?
It is not a common day of the week. Really, it's based on, do I have option period ending where I need to, like, negotiate that, and I need to be in front of a computer for a client. It's just based on the client's needs. So if I seem to have, oh, I booked 2 listing appointments this day and someone else wants to see a property or do a listing, I just try. I'm as flexible as I can be with clients. So it doesn't always work out the ideal way that I want it to, but it's kind of based on contract timelines, based on other days that I've already booked in person appointments. So I know some people will do it where it's like the same every week, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to do it that way. I have to be as flexible for my clients as I can and kind of book it that way.
Well, that makes sense to me. And you might put out an ideal week, and you say, okay, my buffer days where I'm getting all of my administrative tasks are these days, and then you get a phone call from someone that you've done 4 transactions with over your career, and you're like, well, throwing that out the window, I'm going to go and work for them, get this new listing done. And so I think it's just important to identify that you have those days. You're going to have those production days, which Dan Sullivan calls as focus days. And then you're going to have those buffer days, which you're working, but maybe you're kind of just cleaning things up and making sure that you're ready for the next focus day. And then what I love about Dan, and I want to talk about this because I think it's important for highly productive agents, especially like yourself, that are doing a lot of it without administrative help. You've got your free days where you're not thinking about doing anything in your profession. And so how does someone like yourself, Kristee, do all of this without burning out, without burning up to a crisp? And I think it's important to say you can't burn out unless you're on fire already. And so I think a lot of people, the first thing you need to do is, let's not plan, a gazillion vacations, and then figure out how you're going to fit your career into it. The first things first, you've got to work, and you've got to be diligent, and the diligent prosper. And that's in scripture, which we'll get to here in a minute. But, after you've gotten some work done, how do you disconnect? How do you find some free time? Do you plan your vacations a certain way? Do you have some hobbies that you do? What do you do to just kind of, lighten the load of this, what can be very obsessive, very crazy business of real estate brokerage?
Well, I'm not the best. I mean, I definitely could learn from people who set their me time or, time away from real estate. What I try to do is not do any sort of showings on Sunday. I still am like involved in real estate. If someone needs to make an offer that day, I'm writing up the offer. But physically, I start to feel exhausted, like go 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 out all the time. So I've just kind of set it to where, and it's not every Sunday. There have been a few where a client really wanted a open house, wanted me to be the one doing it, so I did it. But for the most part, I like to not do showings on Sundays, which offers me a little bit of downtime. And things that I do, I like to, read God's word. I like to go to church. I like to watch movies. Not anything really exciting. I just feel like we're go, go, go all the time in real estate, that it's nice to just kind of chill whenever we have any sort of time. Taking the dogs for a walk, just things like that. Really, I don't have anything crazy going on. It's like real estate is my life. So,
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and that's dovetails right into the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is faith. And one of the things that is in the scripture, it's in the Old Testament that you're supposed to respect the Sabbath, and for Christians, it's Sunday as a day of rest, not a day of like, I'm going to go out and excursion and do all these other things. So I think that if you can focus that day on God, you shared that you go to church. You shared with me that faith is a big element of your business, and I think we'll get into that here in just a second. my career coach, Rory Vaden, who's been on this podcast, was episode 100 of our podcast. He shared with me privately when I was a coaching client of his. He said, look, what you learn on Sunday will make you a rock star on Monday. He's like, going to church, having a good faith background is going to help you through those struggle points, is going to help you through the crazy, heavy harvest seasons that you might have. And speaking of harvest, someone that's been successful like you, Kristee, you have, it's been written multiple times here that I've seen that you are very charitable, and you actually donate at least 20% of your gross commission income to charities, to faith-based organizations. And that's incredible. I mean, I'm a man of faith and I feel like I'm very charitable, feel like I'm very generous, but I'm not doing 20%. Where did that come from? How did you decide that that was going to be something that you were going to do? And most importantly, why are you doing that?
Yes. So, where it kind of came from is that we believe that 10% is the tithe. So, that is something that's like a non negotiable. It's the tithe. We do it regardless of what the income is. And so then we wanted an offering. And so we wanted to match that tithe with a 10% offering. And so that is kind of where the 20% came from. We have been givers from the beginning. I mean, when my church kind of expanded, they bought a property, they bought some land, and so we wanted to buy some acreage. We had the opportunity to sow into that, and it just kind of kept on snowballing forward. And for me, it was just a matter of you can't outgive God. You don't give God because you expect something back, but it's like there's no amount that you could ever do to repay for all that He has done, all of His goodness. And so I know that everything that I have comes from God. I have people ask me all the time, how do you get your business? Where do you get your leads from? And they almost see it almost seems like I'm hiding something because I'm like, God, but it's true. It's like, I mean, it's not, maybe I get a few from Zillow, a few from, it's like those aren't really my sources. It's really unexplainable how my business has grown. I mean, this year it's been my best year yet. It's been overflowing. I actually told my mom, and I were joking, and I was like, God, can we like slow down the floodgates? And my mom was like, don't say that. But it was funny because it's like it's just been like so overflowing in abundance. And so for me, I know that that's from God, and I know that if I ever get my eyes off of that and start thinking that Kristee is doing all this and get prideful, that could stop tomorrow. I just, 100% everything that I have is coming from God. And it's what also keeps me going because you do start to feel burnout. I mean, I've been doing this 13 years and I've been doing holding a lot. There's a lot of people that do a lot less than me and have several assistants, so I've been doing a lot of work for a long period of time trying to do it on my own because I micromanage too much. But that is what keeps me going. Is it's like one of my favorite organizations is the A21 campaign. And I literally am, I mean, I could be saving someone from slavery right now, by my funds, by my ability to donate. I could be, helping someone, their life is saved because I'm sewing into a ministry and that person preached a message. I don't feel like for me that my gift is hands on. I've tried, volunteering at the church and the children's ministry and things like that. I feel like the gift that God gave me was the ability to make the income to be able to help they need sowers, they need that seed. And so that's kind of where I feel like my ability was, and it's what drives me. We actually didn't mention this before, but back early on in my real estate career, I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I just want to do a Solomon offering. And so I gave like half of what I had in my retirement away because I just wanted to show God, like, I'm not relying on this. Relying on you. You are my source. You are my provider. And that's how I kind of feel at the end of the day. It's just, I could do that all over again. That what I have, I mean, I've given more than what I have in savings or any sort of retirement or anything like that, because I just feel like God is the provider and God is the source, and that's where my hope is.
That's amazing. It's difficult for me to find words to share after everything that's just wonderful that you've shared, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try here. Okay. So, a few things that I've picked up along the way that in the Old Testament, Abraham, which is a pivotal character, Abraham was blessed to be a blessing and built many amazing things because God's kingdom needed to grow. And all of it was a reflection of how wonderful God was, not how wonderful Abraham was. And I think I hear a lot of that in what you're saying. More current, and I think for people who are not of the Jewish or Christian faith may hear a lot of what we're saying and just say, well, what's a tithe? What's an offering? There's a difference between the two. I thought they're the same. And so, just real quick, a tithe literally means a tenth of your income, and then anything stacked above and beyond a tithe is called an offering. And the biblical old fashioned storehouse was you'd have these big silos, and they would say give a tithe, give a tenth of your first fruits. Before you use anything on your own, you give 10% to the church, and that's going to bless the rest of the community. And I think you're right. I think that there are different vocations. There's different roles that people of the community of God share. Some are incredible servants, but they may not have the income making ability that you have. And one of the difficult things that I think a lot of people get caught up in is that I've got to serve, I've got to be the hands and feet of God, I've got to be the hands and feet of Christ. And there's truth to that. But if there's no money behind it, it'll fall short. There can be all the volunteers in the world, but if someone's not buying the bottles of water, if someone's not buying the well that's going to be created in Africa, if someone, Bill Gates doesn't sit back and say, okay, I'm going to solve this global issue here, and I'm going to put scientific research behind it, I'm going to put money behind it, none of it happens. So a more recent non-biblical example of tithing that I want to share is that John D. Rockefeller, one of the titans of industry in the Industrial Revolution here in America, shared, I would have never been able to tithe the first $1 million I ever made. So at that time, over 100 years ago, Rockefeller saying, I would never have been able to donate $100,000 on that $1 million if I had not tithed my first salary, which was $1.50 per week. Isn't that incredible? It starts with the 15 cents of tithe that he's going to do per week on that $1.50 per week salary, that then he makes $1 million and gets recognized for giving away $100,000. But it starts out small. It starts out with those first couple of deals that you do, and then it just builds, doesn't it, Kristee?
Yes, definitely. I was just gonna say, for us, thankfully, it's just been one of those things that it's like, it's not a struggle at all. It's like one of those things that it just we happily give, and it's just, I feel like that's just something that has been maybe a gift put in us, that's just, we enjoy to be able to do that.
All right, two final questions for you. And I asked this of all of my guests, Kristee. So you ready as we finish the show? Okay. All right. So the first question is this concept of Dear Younger Me. It comes from a song that I love. It's a song you've probably heard before by the band Mercy Me. And what's not in the song, but it's sort of the way that I understand the whole concept of the song, is this advice you wish you knew when you were 22. So the writer of the song says that there's all these different things that he's learned over his period. And I assume it's a guy because it's guy singing, but it could be a gal that wrote the song. But the whole point is that you've got someone who's older, who's experienced some life, who's had some struggles, who's had some trips and falls and stumbles along the way, and they're imparting some wisdom back to themselves in a letter when they were in their 20s. And Kristee, as I asked you this question, this Dear Younger Me question, I also want to share that you've been pretty open with your faith, and you've shared that Psalm 138 verse 3 is really important to you. And I want to share that before you answer your question, because I think that really ties into a lot of what your answer might be. So Kristee shares that Psalm 138:3 is one of her favorites. And it says, "On the day I called, you answered me. You made me bold with strength in my soul." So what's that dear younger me advice you wish you knew when you were 22?
Well, the dear younger me advice would be one, we've kind of talked about it a little bit previously, but it would be that I think that I do need to step out and trying things that if I could do it all over again, trial and error, I wouldn't be afraid to make mistakes, to try things that I would have brought on agents sooner. I realized that two of the ones I brought on, it wasn't the right fit. But had I done that sooner, I'm still open to eventually having more agents. And I think that trying things and being open to failure, being open to, if I could do it all over again, I would have started to really not do it all on my own the whole time. I would have tried to venture out and do find what worked best for me, but just being open to try things and to failing earlier on. So that's one thing as well. That verse and where that comes from. Not to touch too much on it, but I had, and I don't know if this is just from how often I was working or whatever, but I had really gone through a season of feeling weak and God being my strength. And so, where that verse comes from is it's my daily reminder that God is the one who makes me bold in my business. God is the one who gives me the strength to do my business. And so that's where that came from. But
That's beautiful. It's a great way to tie all that together, that as successful as you are and as much as you've accomplished and as generous as you are, you feel weak at times. And I do too. I second guess myself. And there are people that may be listening to this podcast that are like, you have X amount of guests, you've had these different awards, you get to talk to all these different people. Of course, you're constantly on a mountaintop, aren't you? And the answer is no. This is hard. It's a struggle. It's a constant, you've got to constantly remind yourself that you can do anything with God. And if you let go and you let God interact in your life, I think that that's the key message. And I just have to ask one little follow-up question to that before we go to our final question. Where did you pick up that Bible verse from? Was there someone that showed it to you? Was there a period of time where all of a sudden it just came to you? How did you pick that up as really your anthem or your mantra?
that is a wonderful question, and I wish I had the exact answer to that. My mom she texts me Bible verses like daily. So it could have come from that. It also could have come from my Bible reading and God just like that verse standing out. However, I saw that verse, it stood out to me like instantly. And I can't remember if it was from her or from one of my readings, but all I know is that when I saw it, I just knew like that is my verse because I was just going through such a season. I mean, nobody would have known because I've increased my sales ever since I started real estate and I don't share or show my weakness. And I don't want my competitors to know that. But I was going through a season where I was just feeling like, God, you are my strength. And when I saw that verse, I just kind of like held on to it. Like I was like, this is my verse. So
Well, and for those that aren't as familiar with the book of Psalms or Psalm 138, a lot of Psalms was written by King David, who accomplished amazing things, especially on the battlefield. He was an amazing warrior and had God at his side, but also stumbled, had some very public issues that you can read about in the Old Testament. And that's the thing I would say, parting thought just about the Bible and why faith is important to business people. It is a great historical lesson, but also it's a great book of encouragement. And I would encourage for each of you, I've got some Bible verses that are very important, that empower me, that remind me, they inspire me. There are all these statements, these words of encouragement throughout, and I've underlined them, I've highlighted them. And I would imagine it's probably one of those things that you've got, whether it's, mom's, verse of the day that she's sending to you, or you hear it from a pastor, or you've just underlined it, all of a sudden you keep coming back to that and you say, that's it. That's my motto. That's what's going to be important to me. That's going to really lift me when I'm feeling like I'm struggling. All right, Kristee, final question. And this developed actually from a previous guest of ours. When he answered the Dear Younger Me question, this is what he answered. He answered that he was in a mentoring group, and this guest was named Chris Oakley. Chris tragically passed away last year in a hunting accident and was my career coach for a period of time. And Chris shared that when he was in his 20s, he was in this mentoring group. There was a faith-based mentoring group, and one of the exercises that they were supposed to do when they were in their 20s was to read this book called The Principle of the Path by Andy Stanley. And Andy Stanley in the book has his reader actually write their own obituary. And it's this idea of let's start with the end in mind, which is an old Stephen Covey part from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But when Chris shared that he did that, he wrote his own obituary, it became, this is my vision. This is my vision for the future. And this is what God has called on my heart. And he was living a mission-driven life until he passed away last year. So for you, if you were to have a good friend deliver your obituary, or you had a newspaper columnist deliver your obituary in the Sunday Times, what would you hope that they would say to you at the end of your life, or say about you regarding your legacy?
What I would hope that they would say, and is just that I had a life to passionately follow and be obedient to God in whatever calling and whatever purpose He had for me. That, yes, real estate is great. It is my passion. But at the end of the day, it's not my God. And I want to be living. God has exceedingly abundantly more than I could ever imagine. Just to give a little small thing, whenever 30 Under 30 called me to do the cover shoot, I don't like being in front of the camera. I don't like doing the, I don't, so it wasn't like, I wasn't one of those people that was like, oh, I always want to be on the cover. I actually said, let me check my schedule and get back to you, because
That's
it made
amazing.
me, it
I
made
find that hard to believe because you're so fashionable and you're always looking on point with everything, and you do such great photo shoots. I've never heard that before. That's amazing.
Well, it makes me nervous, and I don't like anxiety or being nervous. So that's not my thing. But long story short, I felt like it was a God thing. I felt like I had such a wonderful experience going there, stepping outside of my comfort zone, meeting the other 30 Under 30s, meeting Rob, being part of the photo shoot. And afterwards, I was like, thank you, God, because that was never something that I thought that I wanted. It was actually something that kind of gave me anxiety. And when I did it, I stepped outside my comfort zone. I was like, what a special blessing. Not only was I able to be part of 30 Under 30, but I got to be chosen to be on the cover. And that's not something I would have ever wanted. So my point in all of this is that God knows better what I will enjoy, what I'm meant for, what I'm called for, not me. And so I just want every day to be walking out the plan and purpose that God has for me. So at the end of my life, I would want to be a person that wasn't about Kristee and what Kristee wanted and material things. Yes, I love material things, but like I want to be about what fulfilled me, and I lived out the plan and purpose that God had for me, and that God was pleased with me. And I think that's ultimately that I just want to be pleasing to God.
A final thought that I have on that answer, because I love it and I want to accentuate your point. There's a thought leader, a Christian man that I really enjoy. He's a great podcast named Ed Milet. Ed shares that one of his greatest fears in life, and it's what drives him, is that he's going to be done with his life. He's going to get to heaven, and God is going to introduce him to his potential. And one of his greatest fears is that he's going to be introduced to his potential, and they're going to be strangers. They're not going to be alike at all, and he's going to look at what he could have been, and feel sad about that. Now, one of the greatest blessings, or one of the things that he feels like could be the most wonderful thing, is that God turns to him and says, Ed, well done, good and faithful servant. Here is your potential. I want you to meet him, and they're twins. They're best friends, because he achieved everything that God had set on this earth for him. And I just think that that's wonderful, to be living out your calling, to living out your passion, and not be shy about it. Because there's so many people of faith out there that are worried that out there in the world, in the secular world, where They may say, I might not get a deal because someone might not have the same faith upbringing, or may not believe the things, or may have assumptions about me that I just can't control. So I'm going to be kind of guarded, and faith is just going to be a Sunday thing for me, or a church thing. And I applaud you for being so open and so kind with your faith. And I think that's really that's genuine for me, that I recognize that I can be, even though I'm open about it, I can be even more open, and I can be more charitable, more giving. Kristee, you have blessed so many people that listen to our podcast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. As you know, we're at the end of our show, and I've got to remind you, if this episode blessed you, if you know someone that needs this encouragement, please share it. You can do it as simple as a text message, sharing the link to the episode. Obviously, a 5-star review, a comment that Kristee could hear saying that this blessed you it would enrich our lives, but then it helps spread the message. So thank you so much for tuning in. Kristee Leonard, thank you for being our podcast guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And if people want to check out the Leaders Realty, if they want to send a referral your way, if they've got someone that's moving to Austin, and gosh, we know there's lots of people moving into Austin, how do they connect with you, Kristee?
Sure. So my website is theleadersrealty.com, and my cell phone is 512-695-5144. And I would be happy to assist in any way that I can.
So go find her on theleadersrealty.com. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati. Thank you so much for downloading. Thank you for rating, sharing, etc. This has been another great episode of the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. And as Kristee and I love to say, we will see you around the neighborhood. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.